Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest webinar in our series. I'm Samara Donald, and I lead Enterprise and Partner Marketing at Netlify. Before we get started, just a couple of quick notes on the event platform here. On your right, you'll see the chat and Q&A windows. Please do ask your questions for the speakers throughout the webinar, and they'll be getting to your questions at the end in a Q&A session. You can also feel free to use the chat window. Thanks already for folks sharing with us where you're coming from in the world today. It's so great to see everyone around the world. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Also, just to let you know, we are recording the webinar today, and we'll be sending that out with some additional resources following the webinar. So let's get rolling here. Today, we're very excited to be welcoming our partners and speakers today. Christian, Thomas, and Niels are going to bring forward today a story of how they're helping Hilding Anders move to the modern web and how the Jamstack delivers for large-scale e-commerce sites like Hilding Anders. Before we started that story, though, my partners asked me to just do a little bit of context setting. So I wanted to start with some background on Jamstack, as I know folks here today are coming from different backgrounds. We have folks from business side of the house, engineering side of the house, and just a little bit of level set on where we got here. So if you don't know what Jamstack is yet, don't worry. It's quite simple. It's JavaScript, APIs, markup, and we're definitely going to be talking about the stack in this webinar today. We recently did an annual Jamstack survey, and what we found this year is that 2021 was definitely the year where the Jamstack became mainstream. We're seeing some really interesting trends showing that Jamstack is being used in all industries in a wide range of use cases and really has become the new way to build applications and websites of all kinds. So why is that happening? What's up behind this trend? And broadly, there's a larger shift in technology as a whole, as many of you know, toward cloud computing, serverless, decoupled architectures. And that's really spurred this on for web on top of this. What that decoupled architecture really looks like is separating, the front end from the back end logic. And with the front end being able to be pre-rendered into these highly optimized static pages during the build process. For developers, this new way of working really gives greater flexibility, capabilities, capacity, portability, and really just being able to build for being ready for anything. High loads, low loads, scalability, etc. And for businesses, this offers so much more to advance your business. It's also really deliver an excellent experience for customers. As the Jamstack ecosystem has grown rapidly, there are now many, many tools that can be used to build dynamic web applications. This, of course, is allowing developers to choose the best of breed tools for this specific job to be done. But the rapid pace of innovation and abundance of choices also does add some complexity. And especially when it comes to integrating these tools and composing a web application without sacrificing developer experience and performance. Netlify is the platform that really helps developers put these parts of the decoupled web architecture together through its integrated build pipeline and to deploy and manage web applications with scale and speed. Together with our partners, we help customers choose the right tools and outcomes for their customers' needs. And that's why we're so excited to have Uniform and Kruso here today to show this in practice and show how they work with Hilding Anders to help navigate the Jamstack ecosystem and really deliver a great experience for their customers. So let's get started. I want to welcome first Christian Bennick from Uniform. Hi, Christian. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Samara, hi everybody. Thanks for having me at Netlify, Samara. Great to be here again. Really enjoying being in these webinars together with you guys. So we at Uniform pride ourselves very much of being part of the Jamstack community. Uniform, just spending a few minutes on telling everyone on the call about who we are, and then I will hand over to Nils, who is the CTO of Kruso, one of our partners that will tell you more about how Kruso used Uniform in practice to help Hilding Anders build a truly composable stack centered around modern headless architectures. One of the things that we can all agree on very fast is that online commerce continue to rise. That's undisputable. Mobile shopping is leading the way in that. Um, Omni-channel and being able to navigate in this new space is something that we all need to be very much aware of. And one of the things that online commerce, of course, need to embrace very much is this omni-channel paradigm of being able to show and give the same experience across channels. And one of those enablers of that is basically being able to create compositions that can span across channels. So independent compositions that are not tied to specific channels. Um, we see buyers that don't buy from the same shop again. Change that with personalization as a way of basically building on your commerce, on your online commerce as well. Uniform is part of the Jamstack community. Uniform is priding ourselves of building a smart grid that help connect all these different digital platforms that are in the Jamstack space together into basically a coherent but very much decoupled and composable DXP, where Uniform provides orchestration across all of these different services and tools. And next slide, please. Yeah. So Uniform is this truly composable DXP that are built on a set of different pillars, basically. So we build and provide pre-built integrations to a variety of these headless systems. We provide and let you use your basically front-end libraries of choice, not tying developers into any specific framework. We provide a set of SaaS services that help you utilize these different services in a conform and uniform way. So essentially allowing you to create and build experiences and compositions across multiple headless systems at the same time. So utilizing multiple content sources and or commerce engines at the same time in the same tool without being tied into a specific framework and without being tied into a specific way of working. So by that, basically providing the biggest possible freedom for developers, but also giving marketers and business users the best possible tool across these headless technologies. And all of this is then pre-built and made out in such a way so that you can execute personalization, testing, and delivery of these things all the way into the edge, utilizing, for instance, Netlify functions or any other CDN that allows you to execute these things all the way on the edge. To talk about composability and how this has affected one of our clients, Nils from Kruso, will sort of take you through what they did with Hilding Anders and how they set it up. But before going into that, Nils will talk a little about what Kruso sees some of the trends in the commerce space and how that influence Kruso and the way they work with customers. So over to you, Nils.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Nils. I'm the CTO of Kruso. Kruso is a tech web agency in Denmark. We've been working with both Uniform and the guys from Uniform and Thomas for a long time. And just to dive a bit into what we see in the market right now is that this one of them is recognizability across commerce experiences, meaning that have for a long time seen that customers are expecting a high level of recognizability across all the systems and the touch points they have. And when one of the major players, think Amazon or Zalando locally here, changes something in their flows, everyone is expected to follow that and see it everywhere, and get used to that experience pretty quickly. What we've seen is that historically B2B facing shops and commerce sites have not been having that optimization and have not been following along. You just bought a standard platform and that was kind of what you were using. But today it's the same people being the purchaser on the B2C and the D2C and the B2B shop. So when they go in and shop in these, they want recognizability. They want to have the same experience across all the touch points and how they're working with these platforms. And they want to be catered for and have a great experience everywhere. What we're building for specifically Hilding Anders is a platform where we can reuse components, where we don't have to rethink everything. That's what we want to do across all our customers. And if a client comes and say we want to reuse this one across B2B and B2C and D2C, it's not an issue, because it's just the data being put into it, and the flow will be the same. Then we have the composability and complete freedom, and this talks into composable commerce and the whole uniform thought process, and the whole Jamstack part. And when I say complete freedom, you have complete freedom, but it should be with a kind of structured approach. And what you see, and I think Thomas will come back to that later, is that you can easily overbuy. You can buy too much to do this, and many services will do the same. So don't overbuy the services, buy the ones that fits, and be agile. And then the next kind of thing we see, if you can go forward one slide, is that we choose to go just one back again. Yes, thank you. One back. That one is that we choose to go with this composability without complete freedom, because we kind of stick to some of the technologies from the beginning. And we need to do that to make sure that the platform and the architecture will stick to the end and will hold out. For this platform and for these projects, we go with Uniform as the DXP and as the whole composable thing, as the glue between the things. And then we have Netlify in as the whole part where we don't have to maintain DevOps systems and all this. So we have a few services that we kind of lay the foundation upon, and then we move from there. Move along. Yes. Then we work a lot and see a lot of clients hiring their own teams. If they don't have them today, they are starting to build them. And that's kind of what we mean with mixed teams and true partnerships, is that we as a vendor will need to go in and work with the clients and their teams, and kind of help them when it gets tough, or when they need to have extra hands on deck. Um, and there's also partners on both sides, but the thing about the tight collaboration and the whole thing, is this kind of that everyone has to work together, and we have to work as one team, and that's also, yeah, one of the trends we see. And then I can take it over to Thomas, who will no, back to Christian. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, just one point here, because when we build our platform with all of the different vendors, um, some of the vendors that we work with, we enter into some more close partnerships with, to basically help them and us provide better experiences to both ours and their customers. Uniform and BigCommerce has fairly recently entered into a close knit relationship, which in this project was also key, because we were able to help both Hilding Anders and Kruso as a joint force, so we could help out Nils's team with relevant information from our platform, but also help basically bridge the gap into, in this scenario, BigCommerce when that was necessary as well. So with BigCommerce, we help basically customers get a no-code experience added to their existing great commerce engine by applying Uniform as the composition tool that helps customers utilizing both platforms to create these channel agnostic compositions, or pages, if you want to call it that. So essentially, Uniform and BigCommerce enters into this partnership to make sure that we can accelerate the delivery and development of really great commerce experiences for our joint customers. So that was one of the key things that was relevant in this project as well. With that said, I'll pass on to Thomas Krag, who is coming from Hilding Anders, and will tell us about the project and the influence the project had for him at Hilding Anders. So over to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Christian. I'm Thomas. I'm the CTO at the Hilding Anders Group. I'm fairly new there. I'm focusing at the moment very much on the direct-to-consumer e-commerce projects, because so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Hilding Anders is, to give some context to the project, and then talk a little bit about the challenges and where that's led us into this project. And then towards the end, we can talk a little bit about the challenges of these types of architectures and technologies, and sort of roll back into some of the points that Nils was making before. So very briefly on Hilding Anders, next slide. So Hilding Anders is a group of brands in the sleep industry and the bed industry. So founded in 1939, global group in that we have operations across Europe, Russia, and Asia. The mission is improving lives through sleep, and it is basically a classic B2B manufacturer that has bought brands across these countries, over 40 countries worldwide, and makes beds and mattresses, and has been engaging, but is now accelerating a direct-to-consumer e-commerce project to try and go deeper into this idea of improving life through sleep. Next slide. So basically, we can sort of say, I think we just skipped this one. That was a bit redundant. So basically, the journey we're engaging on is just being a leading bedding and mattress supplier to becoming a consumer-focused, digital-first health and wellness company, with sleep solutions, a lot of services around sleep, but also, of course, still selling beds and mattresses online. For that to happen is a big transformation. It's a big digital transformation, cultural transformation. So next slide. So the plan is over the next 5 years, basically, to transition, the culture, the capabilities, and the brands themselves to sort of point into that direction. I think this is sort of the context I wanted to give, because as part of that, we're obviously in need of building e-commerce platforms, but they need to be omnichannel enabled. They also need to be very adaptable, because it's very easy to say we want to improve life through sleep. It's very easy to say we want to be a consumer-focused, digital-first, but the emphasis in consumer-focused, digital-first effectively means rapid change, because we don't know what the consumer wants. The consumer demands in this industry changes, and we have to be able to adapt. And we have to do that across multiple brands. So that's another additional challenge. So Hilding Anders owns more than 20 different brands, and at the moment we're working with 3 brands on as sort of prototypes for this transition, but that also informs the direction we're going in. So that's sort of the main background on Hilding Anders and the transformation we're doing. And then I think we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the reason we've gone in this direction. So ultimately, and Nils will join me here, I think ultimately the idea of a headless architecture obviously really speaks into this idea that we want fast change, we want strong customer experiences, but we also want the ability to run multiple branded websites using the same backend systems and integrations. And then the big challenge comes, which is, we need to do something. We need to be able to move fast. So we need fast time to value. But because of the ambitious journey we're on, we also cannot limit the value at sort of the top of the curve. We need to build in a way that lets us develop further. And I think, do you want to talk a little bit about how this helps do that?
Yes. So you can say what we're doing is that, back to what Christian told about uniform, in the bottom of the screen, we have uniform tying into Contentful and BigCommerce, and a Next.js stack on front of it. And that means that the plan is to reuse code and reuse components across these brands. And I think we'll come back to that later, but we have a front-end framework as well on top of this, where we can pick and choose components to get into new stuff pretty quickly. Thomas has a lot of ideas of what he wants, which he has presented, and we kind of brought this up or drew this up from that. So what this means is that we can, when a new idea arrives, or when a new trend starts, or when Corona wave 4 hits, we can scale and we can build stuff that caters for those needs, without having to reinvent the wheel every time.
I think next slide. Yeah, so I mean, I think in order to enable the benefits of a Jamstack architecture to give us these advantages, Uniform and Netlify as well actually plays a vital role in sort of making us faster to market. It enables us to get faster onboarding for individual brands. The idea that we can have a composing editor that is essentially agnostic to the code we put into it has enabled us to take in an existing front-end component library to very rapidly build front-end components and deploy them. And back to Nils's previous comments around partnering with an agency, what we envision and what we're working towards is a partnership where we will have some developers in-house and we will use Kruso for sort of larger projects and for technical support when things get difficult. I think this type of modern tooling really helps in that setup.
Yeah, and I can tie a few words. Looking from a developer's perspective, this whole stack and this whole setup makes so much sense because we can quickly onboard new people because it is just this JavaScript framework. You don't have to have individual Visual Studio setups and complex systems. It's pretty simple for an individual developer to come in if it's a freelance or an agency or anything. We can go in and set them up within a few hours, and they can build individual components without affecting the rest of the system. So yeah, the rest of the slides showed up. I don't know, Thomas, will you continue a bit of IT and DevOps?
Sure. I mean, I think Netlify plays a big role there in sort of giving us not only a very sort of easy to set up DevOps stack, but also give us some consistency across the various tooling. I think I'll come back to later some of the challenges from a company side trying to build some of this technology, why DevOps can be a problem, and I think Netlify really helps us there. And then I think back to the sort of idea from earlier. I've been in the e-commerce and digital space for many years. I've built headless front ends before, and some of the challenges there are you need to build a code base that can be maintained. You need the time to market to be fast, but you also need to not limit the value you can produce over time. And I think this combination is so far the best I've seen in a sense, because it provides a strong onus to do composable front ends, to make sure that the modules are tested and work correctly, because you need to be able to deploy them across multiple brand properties.
And to take why we chose Netlify, and that is this whole IT and DevOps and the developer experience as well. That is really, really simple. We don't have to have infrastructure guys hired in. It's all set up. We can skip the old DevOps systems, Team CD, Octopus deploy, or whatever. It's all in there. Our developers love working with it because they just commit code. They go through a testing phase, and when they're ready, they just click a button and it's live. So that's and it performs incredible. So it's quite amazing coming from an old school background and going to this stack instead. That's really a game changer.
Yeah. And I mean, and then on top of that, I think from Uniform and Netlify, we get this ability to personalize front end as well. So this is just a view of the tech stack that we're building and running. I don't think there's a lot to be said here. It's just, we're using Tailwind UI to accelerate development. We're using Uniform to orchestrate pages, and also for personalization and page testing. Contentful as a content management system. All of this, of course, tied into a larger backend, Netlify, to manage the web applications for CI/CD and as the CDN as well, and BigCommerce as the commerce platform.
And the thing about BigCommerce is that it's actually an existing BigCommerce we're tying into. So it's not set up specifically for this project. We're using the headless APIs and the headless capabilities and the serverless functions in Netlify to tie those in and make it work.
Yeah. The next slide is essentially a sort of more detailed view of what that architecture looks like. I don't have anything specific to add. I just wanted to sort of go into a little bit more detail of how the systems are structured. Nils, do you have something?
No, it's a simplified system architecture of how we're working and with the technologies. So it's kind of the way we're building it in the first phases are without a full checkout. We're still reusing the BigCommerce checkout. We are pre-rendering the whole headless website and using the serverless function of Netlify to do card API to get rid of all the cross-site origin issues that you otherwise would have. So that's kind of how it looks now.
Yeah. And then I was kindly asked to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of these types of architectures from my perspective, from the perspective of a CTO trying to build these systems. So if we go to the next slide, I've borrowed an architecture slide from the Mac Alliance, and I'm sort of now intermingling Mac best of breed Jamstack architectures into one, and of course that's not fair. Jamstack is a front end only, and Mac is for those of you who don't know what Mac is, it's microservices based systems, API first, and headless, and cloud native. So it's sort of a name for these API based microservices online, and this is a drawing of what it looks like on paper. And then I wanted to just cheekily, I threw together a drawing of what it looks like in my head, and which is probably not any closer to the real thing, but it is more realistic. So if we go to the next slide, I think you need to, yeah, you'll see a lot of systems. So basically, it's cheeky in the sense that, you know, it's easy to draw these squares neatly next to each other with clear interfaces between them. The truth for a CTO like me is that we have literally more than 20 systems, multiple front ends, you know. So in our case, we have multiple stores, but we also have front-end bed configurators that are essentially separate web apps, and we have apps, and we have customer service interfaces that are in a third-party tool. We have multiple sets of APIs. We also have some systems that, you know, go through the APIs essentially and have direct integrations because they predate the APIs. We have e-commerce, order management, payment systems, ERP systems, PIM systems that all overlap in functionality. So the PIM system stores product data, but so does the ERP system, and so does eventually the order management system and the e-com system. And by the way, on the right side of the slide, you see the POS system, which also has product data. So I think the point I'm getting at is it's very easy to draw these systems as if they were sort of neat microservices, and you just pluck out, I need this loyalty service, and I'll plug it into my system, and the APIs are all clean, and there's no problems there. But the truth is a little bit more complicated than that in reality. Especially when you're talking about omni-channel organizations that also need a retail component. And I guess the point I'm trying to make here is to say, you know, sometimes we need, first of all, you know, we need to sort of really be honest about this and really careful about how we architect these systems and try to understand how these integrations work and make difficult trade-off decisions on what works where. And I think the ambition part of it with using Uniform and Netlify in this sense is it gives us a future path of a consistent CI/CD environment and a consistent orchestration environment for editors of front-end applications, really independently of what's behind it. So whether or not, you know, in one case it's BigCommerce or in another case we want to integrate directly to the order management system, the marketing and front-end editors will have the same orchestration interface. Netlify will eventually ensure that there's a consistent deployment setup. So I think that those are some of the advantages of that, and we can sort of gradually try and clean this up and make it more like the first diagram. Nils, do you have any comments?
No, I think you're completely right that you have to think a lot about how you tie the different systems together, and there's a lot of overlap also in functionality between all these systems, and that's kind of what I meant in the first slides about you can compose them but don't overbuy. Keep buy the things you need when you need them, and tie them in a way that makes sense. So think about how your integration architecture is from the beginning.
Yeah. It's a good point, and I think one of the challenges, of course, is, you know, let's be honest, is there's a license cost to all these systems, and you know, recently we've seen a rise, for example, just as an example of, and I'm not trying to call anyone out, but we've seen a rise of checkout specialized services like Bolt and Fast, and that's all great, but that's another percentage of my margin. And if each of these systems ultimately takes a percentage of my margin, either as a fixed fee or as an actual percentage of my margin, at some point it becomes untenable to build these technologies. So there really is a challenge there as well, in trying to not have essentially too many systems in this diagram, and trying to really nail down where you want to do each function and each process. I think the next slide is sort of an attempt at talking a little bit about the challenges I've seen. You can just unfold it all, I think. So the point I was just talking about is, there's a lot of architectural complexity. I've been in projects before where headless ultimately meant that we just moved the complexity into the front end. So we just ended with all the complexity we might have earlier days had in a monolithic backend. Almost all of it ended up in the React front end, just because you have to sort of orchestrate these complex applications, and without uniform, that was a real challenge. So that's and that built a lot of technical debt in the front end. Then we can always have religious wars over whether front enders or back enders are better or worse. But ultimately, we didn't really manage to remove the complexity. I think in DevOps there's some challenges here. Obviously, when you have that many different systems, you end up having very complex deployment procedures, and you really need to make an effort to sort of unify that as well. And then there's the business discussions about it's really nice to build headless because you have the full freedom to develop anything you want in the front end, but you also have to balance that with cost, and you have to balance it with especially technical debt and maintenance costs. So as I wrote, just because you can develop anything doesn't mean you should. So I'm very sort of adamant that we try to differentiate where we have distinct business advantages, and that's where Tailwind comes in. For me, is I really want to advocate that we follow some reasonably advanced standard in most cases, and then we really differentiate where it makes a difference to our customers and where we can differentiate from our competitors. And then there's a challenge around these systems on back office systems. I've seen setups where a customer service representative needed to look in 5 different systems to explain to a customer where their order was, and obviously that's not viable. So at the end, I've written the role of OMS is underestimated, but I'm not sure that's sort of accurate. There are challenges with these systems in terms of back office support functions and where these data lie and how to organize that. Nils, anything to add?
No, I think it sums it up pretty well.
I think maybe that leaves us 15 minutes for Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that fantastic real world life in action of the Jamstack. I'm actually going to ask all 3 of my co-presenters here to join me, and we'll go through some Q&A here. Some decent questions here. The first one's for me, which is just, is this being recorded? Yes, we are recording the webinar, and we will send it out afterwards and share out to your colleagues and friends. Second question for uniform. So Christian, for you, are there plans? Are you working with Shopify? Do you integrate Shopify as opposed to BigCommerce?
Yeah, we are looking into doing integrations with Shopify as well, and it will probably come fairly early next year. I think that's the closest sort of time frame I can give at the moment. But yes, it is definitely part of our plans.
Great, awesome. And Shopify is definitely a Netlify partner as well as BigCommerce, so you can find that there. And I think for Niels and Thomas, next question regarding, it says, looks like you're using a shared BigCommerce hosted checkout for all the sites. Is there any plan to move to a fully headless checkout? And if so, what have you learned and what challenges have you experienced?
So I think I can start there, and then Nils, you can add if there's anything to add. have two comments. One is the point I made before is we want to try and differentiate where it makes a business difference. So where we can differentiate from our competitors. At the moment where we are early in the journey, that's not checkout. Do we have plans to go to a fully headless checkout? Yes, I'm sure we'll end up there. I think at some point we get to a level where that is a differentiator. I actually think BigCommerce has done a decent job. What have we learned and what challenges have we? I mean, the biggest challenge is around PCI compliance. Is you move away from one checkout to another checkout. The more freedom you want, the harder it is to ensure that you have full compliance on the security side of things when you're dealing with checkout and payments. So either you move from one sort of predefined checkout, which in this case is BigCommerce, to maybe bulk checkout, or your payment provider's integrated checkout adyen in this case, or you start building headless from scratch, and then you do have a PCI challenge, and you need to find a balance there, because as a company, I'm not going to advocate that we get our own PCI compliance, at least not for a while.
No, and to just take the tech side, yes, it is a shared checkout instance. It's also a choice of time to market, that we can again get this out pretty quickly without rebuilding everything and reinventing everything. We have a checkout that works, and we can skip this whole compliance flow. So that's the choice for now.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. The next question would be, what are the unique challenges, if any, of moving to Jamstack from a traditional design? And I'll take that to mean a legacy monolithic architecture. I'll say from my part, for Netlify's standpoint, there are definitely some challenges in migration, or I'll say, things to plot out in your migration. In fact, our webinar, we had a webinar last week about migrations to Jamstack, and we had some really good advice from our solutions architect team on how to think about migration planning. One of the things we talk about a lot is choosing the project that you want to start with, and starting with a project or some smaller projects, so that you're not looking at a complete migration all at once, and really thinking through how you map out that migration as to the stakeholders who are in those web projects, so that you're really clear on what the objectives are from the beginning. So interestingly enough, sometimes the challenges of migration come down to less about the technology and more about the people, processes, and other considerations that you might actually not think about first off. But I'll pass that question to my colleagues here. Christian, from your standpoint, when working with customers, what are the challenges that you see that we're helping overcome?
There, I needed to unmute. I think it's very much to your point. It is to a great extent, it is people and processes that are challenging. We are also, because we are in Uniform, sort of bringing something entirely new into the market. We of course also, I wouldn't say battle, but we sometimes also see people being they don't necessarily have the necessary background or understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and to some extent it can sometimes seem a bit magic what we're trying to show. But people and processes is definitely a challenge, as always. We tend to say that we believe that we've solved a lot of these technological issues, so we've made the technology much easier when you want to move into a Jamstack-based architecture with Uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can add in that sense from a company building in this way. I think it depends on what you're moving away from. I think is part of the answer as well. I mean, the considerations I've had are around technology needs. In a sense, if you're moving from something like BigCommerce stencils or Shogun Page Builder, you need more technology understanding. You need more developers to do this. I think Uniform has really helped and tailwinds on our side to sort of not make that barrier of entry too large. So the complexity gap is. But you're obviously moving into a direction where it is a little bit more developer driven. and less marketer driven. And I've been in other implementations where that really becomes the challenge that and I think Uniform really addresses part of that problem, is that marketers expect DXP capabilities or page orchestration, page composing editors, and they've been a little bit difficult to implement in a Jamstack. And I think we really have an elegant solution together with Netlify where that solves that part of the problem.
Fantastic. Niels, anything to add from your side?
No, it is the same things. You can say we can throw most of our developers at this, but people have to learn to think in a different way than they've been doing before, because we move a lot of the functionality that used to be backend things that used to be coded in Java or .NET is suddenly inside a JavaScript framework instead. So there is some other challenges that needs to be addressed on the way. And if you do that via code reviews or how you do it, it's up to you. But there is some other challenges that you need to think about when going this route.
Yeah, fantastic. The last question I'm seeing is about integration. So, is there an easy way to think about integration or demonstrate what that integration actually looks like? I mean, I loved the slide, Thomas and Niels, that you shared about what it looks like on paper, what it looks like in reality. Lots of overlaps. This is a conversation we even have with Uniform about, wait, where are you playing? Where are we playing? We have some overlap, and that totally resonates with me. But let's talk a little bit about integration. How do you think about those integrations? Particularly, looks like they're asking, the question was asking specifically about BigCommerce and some of the other systems, or maybe how you evaluate where that integration happens.
Yeah, Christian, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I saw the question coming up just before, and I actually just I spun up the demo in the back if need be. But in essence, what Uniform does is we provide this unified mesh across systems in which you bring systems to the table. And by bringing systems into the mesh, these systems are now unified across our platform, which essentially means that whether you're working with BigCommerce or a content source or analytics, to the marketer and to the business user, the tooling is the same, so they can go ahead and build out the compositions and create the experiences and set up the personalization in a tool that is agnostic when it comes to the underlying technologies. So in that sense, you could say that Uniform help abstract some of the otherwise normally fairly complex integrations that you see between CMSs and commerce engines. We basically abstract that away to make that truly composable system. I think that's sort of explaining it very high level. Of course, we have not too much time today, but anytime I'll be happy to do this live without sort of any prep. So we do this every day, and this is what we breathe and live. So this is not slideware. This is actual technology that we live and breathe every day.
Yeah, I was going to add to that with Christian. Call us for a demo. And sometimes we'll go in together, right, Christian? Netlify and Uniform
Anytime.
go in together and talk about how it all comes together. So we're more than happy to do that. Sorry, Niels. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that Uniform has a bunch of really good YouTube videos you can go in and watch, just showcasing the system and what it's actually doing and how it works.
Yeah, and that'll lead us as a great lead into the next question, which is, if you are a programmer, where can you learn more? I can say for Jamstack, there's a fantastic site called Jamstack Explorers. Just go in and Google that, and you'll find that tons of education. I know Uniform's got tons of educational videos. Netlify does as well, and there's just so much out there to be consumed. Jamstack has also large community. If you go to jamstack.org, you can find community meetups, local groups where you can get together with other Jamstack programmers and learn from each other.
Yeah. And for Uniform's sake, you can go to uniform.app and create an account now, and you can basically get started. So there is a very articulate onboarding flow in there where you can sort of choose between different ways of setting up your Jamstack. So you can essentially scaffold your entire system and choose between multiple types of content sources, bring in BigCommerce. So you can basically click your way through to a fully enabled Jamstack with BigCommerce and a content source and deploy it all to Netlify in 10 minutes, basically. So And once you have done that, you can go to docs.uniform.app to read the documentation. There's lots of tutorials on how to get started. Also, as a programmer, there is quite a lot of deep dive material as well on the technology as such.
Great. And you know what? We can include all this in a follow-up email to folks, so we'll definitely do that. Let's take one more question. Christian, I think this may be one you can help us answer. Niels, is you as well. On the BigCommerce checkout, how are you able to control the site-specific branding, shared logo, put in logos, etc.?
I mean, I don't know. I can address that if you want. I mean,
Yeah.
BigCommerce has an integrated single page checkout, and it can be styled. The structure just can't be changed. So you can style it in any way you want. You can put logos. You can put text in there. You can sort of change the copy. You just can't change the flow of the checkout. So ultimately, the order of fields, the order of processing, the where and how the payment methods come in is defined in BigCommerce. By definition, that's part of them taking the PCI compliance. But essentially, most of the copy and the design around it can be adapted. And we have that for different brands. It looks different. So that's not really a problem. It is more when you get into the details of optimizing the flow itself and sort of the fields and what you're asking for, and tying in identity providers and fast checkout solutions that it can be a little bit limited.
Yeah, and I think to just follow up about these shared instances, you have your brands on different instances. So it's not like we have Carpe Diem bets on one on the same instance as Sleeper C and Color Sleep. It's different BigCommerce instances.
Yeah, and I think that's also where part of what we're trying to build is a shared front-end component library that can be tied to the different instances easily. So that solves some of the problems of running multiple instances.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much, speakers, for helping answer these questions. I can say for my part, I took away 3 big things from your presentation. Avoid shifting the complexity to the front end, balancing freedom with simplicity, and differentiating on clear business advantages. I think those are just 3 excellent takeaways for anyone involved in web building, whether you're on the development team, the marketing team, the content team. These are all really good takeaways for thinking about migration to modern web architectures. Thank you so much again for showing us how this works in practice. We're just thrilled to have you all as our partners and customers, and for everyone building more on the Jamstack. Thanks again, and thanks everybody for attending. We'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.